Hi everyone, this is Maggie, and we are back for another WandaVision episode, Easter egg hunt. This episode was absolutely crazy, and I loved every moment from beginning to end, with us seeing this from Monica's and then Jimmy and Darcy's perspectives. That being said, Easter eggs were minimal compared to the last three episodes. This was more like a reprieve from hunting and kind of going to putting pieces together, so things are starting to look a little clearer from our perspective. So let's jump in. The beginning of this episode answers a lot of questions most of us had about what really happened when all the missing people from Thanos' snaps were just blipped back to life. For Monica, it was very confusing and chaotic, with her reappearing in the hospital room, expecting to see her mother in the bed, only to find out from the doctor that recognized her that her mother has been dead for 3 years. We know that from Endgame that the time between Infinity War and Endgame was about 5 years. So in that time frame, in the 2 years, her mother Maria had a reoccurrence of cancer and then died. As she comes together, we hear dialogue from Captain Marvel, which is why Brie herself was listed in the credits. The first part of the dialogue is between a young Monica and her mother Maria. It seems that at some point between Captain Marvel and current events, Monica spent time with her grandmother, likely while Maria was on some space mission, because young Monica says, maybe I'll build a spaceship. I want to be an aircraft pilot. So she wanted to come see her mom in space. Probably that ship that we saw Fury on at the end of Spider-Man. Her room number here is 104, which is a reference to Avengers issue 104, which is a Scarlet Witch and Vision-centric issue. In the issue, Trask keeps Scarlet Witch trapped in order to cause a solar flare to cleanse the Earth of mutants. It definitely is a possible clue as to what is happening here. Until now, I never really considered Trask involved. Because there aren't technically any mutants yet so that wouldn't necessarily be a motive to him. It could be that he's a victim of the Avengers, but I feel like we kind of already did that with Zemo over on Civil War. A small jump in the timeline, and really the best indicator of where we are in the MCU timeline. This is about 3 weeks after Hulk's snap that brought everyone back, which means we're only about maybe a week to a week and a half after Tony Stark's funeral, where we last saw Wanda. This also places WandaVision pre-Spider-Man Far From Home, and the events of this episode take place from before episode 1 to episode 3 of WandaVision. So as those 3 episodes were kind of airing is what was happening on the outside world. We have our first look at SWORD headquarters and get sort of its origin story. We learn it was officially founded by Maria Rambeau, and she remained the director until her death. It most likely branched off from S.H.I.E.L.D. with the events of Captain Marvel making S.H.I.E.L.D. aware that they needed to be taking extraterrestrial threats seriously. With the fall of S.H.I.E.L.D., that leaves SWORD really picking up the slack of Earth 2, which explains Monica's real involvement in this story at all. In the lobby, there are several news programs running, mostly with story about the blipped people returning. There is also the plaque here that is of Maria's mom on the wall and has her nickname Photon, which only further reminds us that Monica at some point is going to assume the role of Photon with powers. However, with one of the news channels here being called Spectrum, we could also see her become Spectrum, because that's another hero name that she went by in the comics and was an Avenger with. We meet the new director, Tyler Hayward. I know that everyone instantly thought he was a bad guy. We do have government trust issues, not only from real life, but the events of Civil War. He does give off vibes that he wasn't really thrilled about Monica's return. Like, for starters, her badge wasn't even working. He isn't overly hostile, but you can tell that he's kind of like trying to put her in place, while she is kind of viewing him as like an old friend or close colleague. It is a big deal to Monica that the program itself has changed. There are less people going into space, and they really have set their focus on weaponry and drones. What Hayward specifically said was they are working on robotics, nanotech, and AI, sentient weapons. It awakened like a part of my brain that remembered we do have an upcoming series called Armor Wars, which will feature Don Cheadle as Iron Patriot or whatever, War Machine. And I'm curious if maybe Sword will be using Stark tech and weaponizing it in a way that Tony would not have approved of. We know that Spider-Man, that Tony had a thing for drones too, and we're going to see them throughout this episode. We also have this part in the background where there's that piece of rocketry that was featured in Infinity War. They released that pre-picture and everyone was trying to speculate what it was, but ended up just being a background prop. We do see that here at Sword Base. So I think it's pretty clear that Sword did help clean up the destruction of Avengers Base and could have their hands on Stark Tech. Hayward also mentions here to Monica that space is full of threats, and Monica makes a point to remember that they have found friends out there as well. Definitely a reference to her time with Skrulls in Captain Marvel and whoever she's encountered since. Monica is given the assignment to help the FBI with a missing person case, which sends her to New Jersey. And we have speculated that the episodes were taking place in New Jersey based off the phone number in the opening of episode 1, so that's not really a surprise that this is in New Jersey. We see the sign for Westview here, and then we're just outside of town. Monica meets Jimmy Woo, the FBI agent who was in charge of Scott Lang in Ant-Man and Wasp. The first and most important part of this episode is that Jimmy has finally mastered the art of close-up magic, just like Scott in Ant-Man, and so it looks like those online training courses must have paid off. He explains to Monica that he is here on a missing persons case, with the details of this making it clear that there's definitely something strange happening here. For starters, the missing person is in witness protection, and when Jimmy reached out to that person's known family or friends, they didn't even remember who he was. It is a male, so it's not Agnes, but I do think that this missing person is definitely a key to what's going on here. To add to that, the police here from Eastview don't even remember that Westview existed, even though it's right behind them. So either it just appeared here out of nowhere, or the energy it's putting off is maybe making people forget that it's there. This makes more sense to me with Wanda's attitude about trespassers later in the episode. Like I mentioned, we never learn who this missing person is, and I do think that it's going to be a big key part in unraveling this mystery. I'm thinking about making another video separately for that, so keep your eye out and make sure you subscribe so you'll get a notification for it. Monica then asks the next logical question, why don't you just go into town? And Jimmy says that the town doesn't want him there, and he can feel it. Like, he can feel the energy it's putting off, that it just doesn't want him there. And he mentions that Monica should probably feel it too, although it doesn't seem like she feels that way. Some little details from this scene. Monica's truck number is S8512, which is a reference to the 1985 comic Avengers issue 12, which features Scarlet Witch and Vision. The drone is S57, and that could be a reference for Avengers 57, which debuted the Vision and is the same color scheme as Captain Marvel herself. Monica then gets right to work with getting the drone ready to send inside. This little drone, I think, is the same helicopter that Wanda finds in the bush in episode 2, and then the magic or energy of this bubble made it look and fit in with the reality of the TV shows. So Monica's drone disappears mid-flight, so then she logically goes and sticks her hand in, also getting herself sucked into the town of Westview. We then call in the big guns, Darcy Lewis, who you may remember from the Thor movies as Jane's fellow astrophysicist. It is clear to her that no one has any idea what's going on, but she has been to a few events like this. She does pick up on some heavy CMBR readings after seeing the drones just disappear. Remember, in Dark World, things were just disappearing, like notably Jane, and then like the kids that were in that warehouse, like their pop cans were disappearing. So this kind of disappearing act she's seen before. Remember that Dark World was also very Infinity Stone heavy, specifically the Reality Stone. This could like have a deja vu effect for her. Like, she's seen this and kind of knows what it is, so she tests for that radiation, and there is readings. CMBR stands for Cosmic Microwave Background Radiation and dates back to the Big Bang, just like the Infinity Stones. We learned about their origin in the beginning of Infinity War from Wong. Since Wanda powers are Infinity Stone based, it does make sense that that would be the kind of energy she gives off, similar to what Darcy would have seen with the Reality Stone, and the same type of energy that Vision himself and Captain Marvel would have. Hayward then comes up with his plan to send in another agent through the sewer lines, which Jimmy is against. They've already lost one agent. Why send another? We do see that the energy field does extend below ground, transforming him as a man in a radiation suit to a man in the beekeeper suit from episode 2. His tether breaks, but then becomes like this old school jump rope, again confirming to us that what happens in Westview does carry out to the real world. And I think that's going to be a very important thing, especially like with the babies, maybe possibly Vision. Things that happen here happen outside too. And then hexagons, yes, more hexagons, and some type of explanation as to why we see them in the show. It looks like this energy field itself is in the shape of a hexagon. However, like Jimmy, we can only wonder why hexagons. I theorized in my last video that this could be a reference to the 6 Infinity Stones, the shape of the Mind Stone in Vision's forehead, the hive theme with the beekeeper, Wanda's hex magic, or 666 for the devil himself, Mephisto. And then there was also some AIM theories from Iron Man 3, so there's a lot of possibilities, but still with the hexagons. Once Darcy analyzes the radiation waves more, she discovers the broadcasting signals, and so she hooks up the old TV. They recognize Wanda. She's a pretty well-known figure as an Avenger. Darcy also points out that while Vision is in the show, he is very dead. Like, he's pre-snap dead. This means that he should not have been brought back by the second snap. We also know that he didn't return from that snap from the conversation with Hawkeye and Wanda during Tony Stark's funeral. But who else are these people? Well, the team worked to begin piecing together who all of these people are, beginning with the Hearts. They turn out to be Todd and Sharon Davis, just 2 ordinary New Jersey citizens. I did some zooming on their information sheets, and as far as I can tell, these are just notes about what they're doing in the show. Probably very similar to the notes that I take for these shows. As for everyone else, Norm, Phil, Herb, they're all just regular people. Herb's real name is John Collins, so John Collins and Sharon Davis are both real people that worked on the show as art directors. Like, they are art directors for the show. So there's 2 names that have real world meaning, but everybody else just seems to be a made up name. Some notable names missing, though, are Dottie and Agnes. Agnes is on the board, but not identified. And Dottie doesn't appear at all. It could be that she hasn't appeared in the show thus far that they've been watching. She didn't show up for the first time until right before the planning committee, which we haven't seen them watch yet. So it just might be that they haven't come across her yet. So she might be on the board later, but as of right now, she's not there. And I think that is an important clue. I do think that Dottie has some meaning or reference. I don't know. I have a feeling that Dottie is somebody important. Darcy is also shocked to find that Monica herself is in the show, which is confusing for them. Is she being coerced? Is she undercover? Like, they're just like, they don't understand that these people really feel like they're in a TV show. It's very mind altering. So I mentioned that Jimmy is writing about hexagons, but if you look at this board, he's also writing about scrolls, confirming that while they are a secret to the general public, agencies like FBI do know about their existence here on Earth. However, this is under the category of who might be doing this to Wanda, but I thought scrolls were like the good guys. So even in 30 years, there are still some trust issues between the scrolls and humans. I don't know like how far that extends. Maybe there's just bad groups of scrolls, or something has happened. Obviously Nick Fury is still connected to them, or maybe they've kidnapped the real Fury, but he didn't seem kidnapped. So I don't know. I think that we'll definitely learn more about this as we get closer to the Secret Invasion that will be a show on Disney Plus. We have the attempted contact of Wanda that we saw in episode 2, but this scene looks very different from what we saw. The whole glass shattering is gone. It's cut out, making Darcy and us assume that someone is censoring the broadcast. I don't know if that's Wanda or maybe someone else. I don't know. So, but the broadcast that is happening inside, like what is happening inside, is being changed for the outside. Now, to that moment that just gave me chills. We are back in the episode. You can tell by the changing of the screen, like we're back. There's a word for that. I just can't think of aspect ratio. The aspect ratio changes. We know we're back in the TV show, but this is from like another cameraman angle, kind of is the vibe we get. So I literally had chills when Wanda raised her hands and you could see that they were glowing. She straight up pushes Monica out of Westview after acknowledging her as a trespasser. She just blasts her through the 4 walls and she's out in reality. And then another like freaky ass moment. Wanda fixes the walls, she's composing herself, and then Vision comes in. We saw this in the last episode, but what we didn't see is that Wanda sees him as Vision that looks dead just for a brief moment, like he looked in Infinity War. But then a moment later, he reverts back to the Vision that we've been seeing. So maybe he's a walking corpse that has like a filter on him. Maybe Wanda was just remembering that he's dead and she kind of was like, no, this is not what I want to be remembering. Like it kind of took her out of this fantasy and forced her to see reality for a moment, but that's not what she wanted to see. And then Wanda's mannerisms here differ again from what we saw in the last episode. Then she kind of almost had this calm, creepy smile. But now she looks noticeably upset. You can tell that she's lost her composure. And then Vision himself also looks very uncomfortable. Vision talks about possibly leaving here. We can go somewhere else. And she's like, no, we can't. This is our home. Like she knows that he can't leave here or that this is where she wants to be. She doesn't want to go back to the real world. And then she says she has it under control. And Wanda and Monica even says that to Jimmy and Darcy, that this is all Wanda's doing. And that is all I have for you guys. If you enjoyed this video, if you want to see more videos from me, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. I also do a podcast that you can find on Google, Spotify, and Apple under Mayday Maggie. And I do a Marvel Monday podcast and a DC Thursday podcast right now. But I will also be adding a Star Wars podcast on Tuesday as soon as shows start coming back on, and then a Walking Dead Wednesday I will start here in a couple weeks when Walking Dead returns. So definitely check those out wherever you watch your podcast. And then I also post on my blog daily at maydaymaggie.com. So I hope you guys check those things out. If you leave comments in any of those places or on my Twitter or Facebook, you can be featured in my podcast. So definitely check those out. Leave me comments. I would love to hear from you guys. So I will see you guys in the next video.